The Detroit Lions picked up a 31-9 victory on Sunday Night Football over the Minnesota Vikings. They now get the number one seed in the NFC, which means they get a first round bye. We won't get to see the Lions play for a couple of weeks. They've got plenty of time to rest. The reason why they won this game so convincingly, though, was because of their defense. I mean, I was worried about Detroit's defense coming into this one. The Vikings, they've been a top five offense. I figured they were going to let Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson go out there and rack up a bunch of catches and yards just because Detroit's secondary is just so banged up. And then, of course, they had one of their top corners go down, so they had to go to Voldor. But they held up. The front just continued to apply pressure. Aaron Glenn deserves a lot of credit for sending more guys than the Vikings were able to block and making Darnold get rid of it quickly. 18 of 41 for only 166 yards. Darnold's been an MVP candidate this year. And against Detroit, I mean, this was by far his worst game of the year. No touchdowns, no picks. The Lions stood pat down in the red zone. They didn't allow fourth down conversions. They didn't allow many third down conversions. The last time I checked, the Vikings were 3 for 15 on third down. I don't know ultimately what it ended up being. And then the run game for the Vikings, they did have 120 yards, but 58 of them came in one carry. So that means that you take away that run, I mean, there essentially was nothing there. The Vikings were throwing it pretty much every single time just for nothing. And then also Justin Jefferson, 3 for 54. He was targeted 9 times. The reason for that was, of course, Darnold not having time to get him the ball, but it was also the elite defensive performance tonight from Amik Robertson, who came over on a 2-year deal in the offseason. They actually played against each other in college, which is funny, and he just completely locked him down. Very impressive. Yeah, and Terrion Arnold ended up leaving with an injury. Of course, Ennis Rakestraw Jr., the young, talented corner, is on IR. Emmanuel Mosley's out. Carlton Davis is on the IR. The secondary is so depleted, and the guys just stepped up that had that next man up mentality. On the offensive side for the Lions, they were very slow in the first half. Detroit only scored 10 points, and for their standards, that's low because they're averaging about 33 a game. But in the second half, they end up getting 21, just giving the ball to Jahmyr Gibbs and letting him go to work. 23 for 139 and 3 touchdowns on the ground. And as a receiver, adds in 31 yards and a touchdown. So 4 touchdowns. He has the most tutties actually in all of football. He's going to finish number one. And remember, he was splitting carries with David Montgomery for over a third of the season, which is just remarkably impressive. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 6 for 77. Sam Laporta, 7 for 63. Jamo, 6 for 34. Tim Patrick had a couple of catches for 15 yards. But overall, Goff, he did throw for 231 yards. I expected him to throw for a lot more. The efficiency, 27 of 33 is good, but the 2 picks definitely were costly. One of the picks, Goff just tried to throw it 50 yards down the field to Jamo and just overshot it, and it was picked off, of course. And then we also saw Andrew Van Ginkel nearly have a pick six, too. So it wasn't the best performance by Goff, but the Vikings have an elite defense. This was a slugfest for the majority of the game. It is what it is. I do think that this win certainly will help the Lions moving forward, not only for the extra week of rest and not having to play a playoff game, essentially getting a free playoff win, but just their defense stepped up when it had to. And this was a playoff game. This was literally a playoff game for both teams, and the Lions came out and did this. And now I feel a lot better about their defense because they're going to get that rest and they're going to be able to bring some key guys back. And we saw what the return of Alex Anzalone did. The defense was significantly better and quicker, stronger, faster, more physical. So once more guys start to come back, you'd have to imagine that things are only going to go up for this team. But just looking at what was avoided by winning this game, having, of course, to go on the road in the wild card as a team that, of course, has 14 wins. So the Lions lose this, they're 14-3, and they have to go on the road in the first round and take on the Rams. The Rams are a very interesting team because they've got an elite offense. Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Kyron Williams. Offensive line's pretty solid. Of course, they've got maybe the best defensive rookie in Jared Verse. I think that's fair to say in the entire league. Just the last time we saw the Lions and the Rams play, it came down to the wire. In the playoffs, it certainly came down to the wire. So having gotten a free playoff win and not having to take your chances against the Rams is huge. I think the Lions needed this by more than anyone else, like especially the Vikings, because Detroit, even though they can go on the road and win, and I still would have picked them against the Rams in that game, the Lions, they need to be able to get healthy and get guys back. That's going to be the difference between them winning and losing the Super Bowl. Because if you think about it, the league's wide open. I think anyone can beat anyone. I don't think there's a single game in the playoffs where I look at one team and I say they have no chance. Like the only they're just not even one to even point out. I mean, the Steelers have beaten the Ravens this year. So, and the last time they played, it was close as well. So, and then the Broncos against the Bills, I think the Broncos actually could win that game. The Packers could beat the Eagles. Commanders, they could beat the Bucks. So, just the Lions, if they're the fifth seed and they have to go to Los Angeles, I mean, the Rams very well could beat them. And if it came down to a couple of different plays the last time they met, the Rams, they could have won that game. So just Detroit, they took care of business. They fed Jameer Gibbs the ball, played through him. It's not always going to be Jared Goff and Amon Ra, even though St. Brown had an amazing game, but this was just all Jameer Gibbs on offense. And then defensively, it was just Aaron Glenn showing exactly why he's going to be a head coach. He'll be the head coach of the Saints, in my opinion, without question. Like, I don't even think it's debatable. He's going to be one of the first coaches that gets hired just because of his defense and his brilliance and his connections to that organization. But when you hold a team as good as the Vikings to 9 points, I mean, that just speaks volumes about this Lions team. They've got an elite mind on defense. They've got an elite mind in offense. The Lions are averaging the most points per game, and they're without Aiden Hutchinson, who would have won Defensive Player of the Year if it hadn't been for an injury. He still actually leads the team in sacks, and Zadarius Smith had a very good game too, so you've got to give him credit. But this defense, just from top to bottom, was lights out. I thought Anzalone had a hell of a game. Brian Branch made several plays. Amik Robinson was fantastic. Smith was fantastic. And then, of course, even like Melifonwu made some plays. Taron Arnold got injured. Volder came in. And just collectively, it was a very, very encouraging game for the Lions. I didn't think they were going to be capable of this defensively. I thought the Vikings were going to put up probably 27 to 30 points, and I thought it would be more of a shootout. But the Lions, I mean, that's just that switch that they have, and they turned it on at the right time, and they found a way to get a win. And with Detroit now being the 1 seed, when I make my playoff predictions, if the Lions had lost this, I would have honestly been very, very discouraged. But now with them getting the extra week of rest and, of course, teams having to go to Detroit. So I think what's going to happen is it's going to be Vikings against Rams. I think the Vikings are going to win. And then I think ultimately it will be the Lions and the Vikings in Ford Field, of course, in the second round of the playoffs and the divisional. And then I do think it's going to end up being, so Eagles play the Packers, and then Eagles will win that to me. And then it would be the Eagles going up against the Bucks. Bucks is very interesting. I think the Eagles are a better team. So yeah, Eagles would have to go to Detroit though. I don't know if the Lions honestly would be able to go on the road to Los Angeles, and then of course you're talking about having to go to Minnesota and then win that game. Okay, now you're going to Philadelphia. It's just too much to overcome. But now having to only get those 2 games, go to the Super Bowl, just like the Chiefs. The Chiefs, they don't play for over 2 weeks. Same with the Lions now. So these are 2 teams that definitely needed that. And those are the 2 best teams in the NFL statistically and just from the eye test, what I've seen this year, the Chiefs and the Lions. I think that's what the Super Bowl is going to be. I know it's easy just to be like, hey, look, 1 seed. I think the Ravens. I think, honestly, you know what? I'm going to go with the Ravens. I don't want to switch up. I'm going with the Ravens. I'm going to go Lions-Ravens Super Bowl when I make my prediction. But yeah, I'm out, guys. Peace.